Hey, what's up guys? Today in this video, we are going to develop two APIs which will serve two requirements inside our application. The first one is a listing API based on the collection ID. So I would like to see all the URLs inside one particular collection. For example, based on my database, I can see that collection 7 has 3 URLs. So the application would need an API which gives me this kind of an information that when collection ID is 7, then I get URLs inside it, right? So this is the first API that we are going to develop, and this is quite straightforward. The one which is a little tricky is this one, which is the detail of that URL based on the collection ID. So what I wanted to do was have route model binding. We have done that route model binding over here as well. But in this particular case, there are two different models which are route model binded, which does have a relation as well. How is that happening? I'm saying that give me a URL which belongs to collection 1 and the URL ID is 2, right? So if you see over here, inside here, my collection ID, the first one parameter is collection ID. So collection ID 1 and URL is 2. Hence, I'm getting this particular thing, right? So I have the collection, which is office collection, and the URL is Amitav Roy test, which is this. However, for some reason, if I keep my collection as 1 and the URL as 3, I want it to return a 404 because that's not the correct way the request should be, right? It should have collection ID 7 over here and URL ID 3. So this is the nested route model binding that I wanted to do, and that is what I'm going to cover in this particular video. So without wasting much time, let's get started. So what I will do is, first of all, clean all the changes that I have and do git log and check out to this particular commit where all the code is gone, and we will start afresh. So suddenly these two URLs should start giving us 404. Go to our api.php and we will create two APIs, rather API definition over here. First one is a get route. So this is what I'm trying to do. I'll have one URL or API endpoint, which is collection/collection ID and then URLs. Here I am binding one model, which is just the collection, and the second one is where collection and URL both are binded. So I will definitely need a controller for this. So let me first create that. I'll do PHP artisan. So I'm creating a controller, and the name of the controller is collection URL controller. So with that, now I'll add the definitions. Okay, so the first one is that the collection controller's index method will be invoked, and the second one will be the view method that will need to be invoked. So let us open the collection URL controller, add those two methods. One is index and one is view. And what do we need to do over here? Let's quickly see. The first one is that we need to bind the collection. So why don't we do that? Straightforward route model binding. So I can basically return response JSON status code of 200. I'll send data collection URL. So with this, data is null, which is not the right thing. That is not what I expected. It should be URLs, right? So I do get the list of URLs which are over here. But I would ideally also like to paginate it, because if a collection has more than 10, then I would ideally have a table which is pagination based. So why don't we try to add that as well and see if that works? So let's just do this and check if the pagination thing works properly or not. Yes, it does. So right now I can see ID 3 question mark page equals 2, ID 4. So 3, 4, and then page 3 would mean ID 6 is being loaded. So this is taken care of. This one was the easier one. Now, the next thing which we would want to tackle is where collection ID is 7 and URL is 3. So right now, if I do 1, okay. Oh, by the way, it will not work because I haven't written any code, but let's just say what we will be doing is return an array. Now, because we have two models over here, we can declare that the first one is $collection and the second one is URL. And with this in place, this works. And obviously 3 or even 5, right? Collection ID 7 and URL 5 does load. But you can see that here it says collection ID 7, but URL 5 is dependent, is part of collection ID 2. So there's really no correlation. There's no hard correlation being checked right now. It just loads the two models, which is not something that we ideally would want to happen. So how do we tackle that situation? Let's see. So to create that dependency in relation in this nested route model binding, the first thing that we will have to do is let the framework know that there actually exists a relationship. And to do that, what I will do is go inside my route service provider. You can find this inside your apps folder, providers. Okay, you have this route service provider. So in here, there is already quite a few things happening. For example, configure rate limiting, okay, which is your API limit of 60 per minute. Okay, the middleware API is being attached to any API which we create with the prefix of API. Those things are configured over here, not something which we are right now interested in. But what we are interested in is add a binding that if there is URL in the API, so why don't we take that as ID and URL equals URL, where basically we are forming the query, okay, and return URL first or fail. So with this, obviously this URL will continue to work. There's no problem because nothing major has happened. But let's just say, let us look at whether the rest of the things are working or not. Suddenly I can see that this URL with ID 5, for example, right, it would stop working. This shouldn't have happened, right? So let me open up URL controller. So this is the thing, show ID. I'm taking this, and my understanding is that this query is going for a toss because we are doing a find and fail over here as well and over here as well, so which is not the ideal thing. I can basically do URL again, bind, do the route model binding, and now if I hit refresh, this data is coming. So that's the only change which we would need here. And then we can close this controller and this tab as well, and let's get back over here. So this is fine. Okay, we will keep that because one more change is required, so we will test after that. So this is still not working. The relation is not being respected. How do we get that? So what we can do is, let's go back to our route service provider code. We have this. We will add one more condition which says that if my request route has a parameter called collection, which will be the case in this particular situation, right? Because we have this route model binding. So if we have that, we modify our query a bit. Let's see how that needs to be done. If request route, there's a method called has parameter. So if this condition holds true, why don't we dump something? Right, this is happening. Nothing happens over here. So this means for this particular tab, when we are making that request, this dump is being added. Whereas over here, this condition is not met and hence this dump is not visible. So we are in business. Let's remove this and write our actual code. We need to add one more condition where collection ID is actually the request route collection at the semicolon. And now, can you see? Suddenly it stopped working. Why? Because 5 is not in collection 7, but 3 and 4 and 6 are. So if I do 6, it does give me that thing. So 1 will not work, 3 should work, and this is how we get the relation, right? So this is basically what I wanted to show you, which is, a nested routing, a route model binding that needs to be done where, your second model is actually dependent on the first model. So that's about it, guys. If you like this video, do click on the thumbs up icon and don't forget to subscribe to my channel.